Welcome to our block 6 of the miniature block of the month in 2022. This block is called Crazy Ann, and I'm not sure what the source of that name is, but we're just going to go with it. It's going to be made with our alternating light. As you can see, it's in the top row of our block, our complete quilt. And it's going to look like this in real size. It's a 4-inch square again. So we're going to be working with flying geese again. We won't be needing to use templates because we have right angle triangles and squares. And we can cut those just as we do normally for piecing. So we'll be working with that. We'll have 2 sections with flying geese squares that are made into a rectangle. Because of the piecing that we can do, we incorporate the seam between. Even though the block could be made with 4 of these to create our piece. The pattern allows for us to do 2 at one time in the process of construction. This way. Well, of course, this way. This way. There we go. Because we're working from the back, that's the front. So when we're putting them together, we'll be rotating them as it shows here. So this number 1 is here, that number 1 is there. Our number 1s and 7s are creating the pinwheel, as we can see here. That'll be 1, this will be 7. We're going to be making 2 sizes of triangles, and for simplicity, we're going to call them large and small, just because of the relative size, not because they're big or little. Of course they are little, because it's a miniature. So our small ones will be the outside of the geese, and our large ones, as we're going to call them, will be the main triangle. Interestingly, this triangle, our larger triangle, is actually going to be the same size finished as this large triangle. So it really simplifies our cutting. Our outside triangle pieces are made up simply with 1 square, 2 triangles, and I've indicated the sewing line for into the seam allowance on just one of your pieces. You can carry them on into the other ones. We'll make 4 identical triangles made with the 1 square and 2 triangles. All right, the fabrics. For our light, we're going to be working with our right angle triangles. And I like to cut from the smallest pieces from the largest pieces to the smallest because of the scraps that we're using. And you can cut your squares in any way from any piece that you have that works. We are going to be needing a 2¼ inch square cut diagonally to create 4. We need 2 of these squares. And then the smaller ones are cut from 2-inch squares. And 4 squares will be in the corner. From our medium, we'll be cutting 6 2¼ inch squares cut diagonally once, and that'll give us 12 large triangles. From our dark, we will be cutting 6 2-inch squares and cutting those diagonally once to give us 12 small triangles. To simplify our piecing, let's set aside the squares and triangles we need for our B units. Our unit B we're going to have 4 of them. Our 4 squares will go here, and we'll need 2, 4, 6, 8 of these triangles. We'll get these out of the way, so we're ready to do those. And our A units will require we'll just divide everything else in 2. So we have 6 and 6. These are all the small triangles. These are large triangles. And these are large triangles. Slightly different, as you can see. Since the printers don't always print really clearly, you may find the dark and the medium are hard to distinguish. And we can mark them on our papers by circling them or putting a letter, a star. You can just say this is a medium, medium. Oh, we have 2. And the darks are these ones, so let's circle those. If I get some lead. Oh, there we go. Now what we can do is pick them up in this order so that we have them all complete as well. So let's put the small triangles here because they're going to go on the outside of the wings. Let's just pile one section of them. So we're going to start with the large light. Then we're going to need a dark small. We'll just stick them underneath. A dark small for number 3. We're going to need a medium, large medium. And number 5 is a small light. 6 is a dark. 7 is a large, because these geese are large on this side. 7 to 8 is dark. 9 is dark. 10 is our medium that's left, the large one. And then we have 11 is dark. And 12 is light. Now we have our full stack for one pile. Go ahead and stack your other one, and then we'll meet at the sewing machine. Okay, quick tool check. We've got our foundation piece, our stack for this unit A, folding card, rotary ruler and cutter and board. Pencil's always handy. I got pins on my sewing machine, little scissor, and our open toe foot. Full bobbin, good thread on top, all good to go. Okay. So we'll begin, of course, with number 1 and number 2. We'll line up our folding card between the two and bring this over to get our seam line. Nice right angle triangle here. Our first piece is always right side down. So we're going to have our large white light triangle down, and we're going to be sewing a dark right angle to this, right sides together. Technically, we're going to be doing this. So why don't we just leave these side placed together and put our paper with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on that fold, and making sure that our, whoops, pencil just fell on the floor. This is the line, the seam allowance outside line, and our fabric beyond is a bit beyond that, so we're pretty good for that. Take it to the machine. I'm not using pins or glue or anything, I'm just going to slap it on there. So it's positioned the way I'd like, and then open up the paper. We're going to sew just from this point here down to the bottom corner. Let's get that done. Oh, I should mention my tools also include a small iron just to my right. And my pressing board is on my lap rather than to the right. I'm in a limited space. So let's fold this back and see that we have right side out, right side out. So right side out, right side out, we're good to go. Let's get a nice little crease on here on my lap. On the cutting board on my lap. Do this with caution. Nice fresh crease. Flip this baby over. Then we'll add a dark triangle to the next one. And I'll take you a little further before you can go. You see we have quite a bit of extra material, but if I gave you a 1/4 inch smaller square to start with, sometimes it's not quite enough to give you the freedom to scooch. You may end up scooching too far one way or the other, and then it's not a good story. Okay, we're going to add number 3, which is our small dark. We'll fold this back so we see our edge. Now we're going to be aware of where this right angle goes. That's the trickiest thing. Let's mark these dots with a pin around the perimeter of our number 3. So we need to go, this is going to be our 90-degree angle, and we're going to be on the fold here. We'll see our stitch line over here. Here's our stitch line. Here's our fold. We need the right angle to be right. I'm going to try to do it with a pin so you can see. This is kind of where our line is going. Here's our stitch line from the previous one, and that's the right angle that we need. So let's take our small dark and right side facing up, slide it underneath to match this right angle. And we have lots of material on both sides here, it looks like. Well, I'm going to just tuck it underneath the light fabric so that it won't ghost through. Put the pins back. Oh, just want to close that. Get my threads tidy here. This time we're staying inside the seam line, and we're only going to the top of our right angle of the larger piece. Okay, we'll open it up, and we've got our first goose in here with dark on both sides. Here's my little pressing iron. I'm going to just drop down quickly onto my pressing board on my lap to get the crease. Beautiful. All right. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 is our large medium because it's a goose. And we'll get our fold line over here. And we're going to trim this again. You can see it's extra material, but it's better to have extra than to have to take it out because of coming up short. So let's just go with that. We all have lots of fabric, don't we? Okay, now the trick is to see where this is going again. We can use the pin to mark the top of our goose. And you can see it's in line with this one previously. So let's line that up with our long side underneath. And about the same amount of fabric on either side. We can see this point here sticking out, and we should line that up with this dot and that point. So let's go a little bit more to the right. And now we can take it to the bed of the machine to clear things away. And these strings or threads are all craziness. And we're going to go just from this edge to this edge because we will be sewing this way again. We don't need to go beyond that. I didn't go into the seam allowance because we are going to be coming this way again. Trim our threads to keep everything tidy. Open this up. Everything's still right side. Look at that little point. Oh, I love foundation piecing geese. Okay, little quick press. Press, press, press. Now number 5 is a white, which we stacked up appropriately. And, excuse me, we'll get our crease, do our trim, sew the piece on, and you can follow along a little bit quicker. You'll get the idea. I noticed that I got a little bit crooked here. So what I'm going to do is take this off and put it back on. I'm going to sew it back on, and I'll show you a quick way to remove your piece when you make a mistake. Thought I'd do it at some point. It happens. I'm going to keep my paper down and just find this one top piece that's wrong, and just take a couple of snips of the threads as it pulls back. If you're going to paper piece lots, you're going to be doing this as well frequently. I'm constantly getting a little sloppy, or putting the wrong one on, or turning it around the wrong way, getting it right side out or inside, right side in, or whatever the case is. So we'll reposition this one and get it back on, and so that the grain is a little bit straighter. You can't really see a lot of grain in this particular block, but to my eye, up close, when it's miniature, it really shows if it's slightly crooked. So let's fold this paper back, get this one on, and we'll hold a little tighter when it goes under the machine, just to make sure we've got it nice and straight. There we go. That looks better. That's a much better seam allowance. Now when we press it back, we're going to get a nice straight grain here, and that'll be much better for squaring up. Let's get this pressed. All right, we'll get the other one made, and we'll give them both a really good press with some starch or spray stabilizer, and then we'll square it up after that last press. Okay, for our B units, we've got our 4 squares and our pairs of medium or the larger triangles. And we're going to start with our first fold. Between 1 and 2, and you'll see how quickly these go together. The nice thing with the foundation piecing is that they're nice and sturdy with the stitching on the paper till we get things put together. So the square is simple to line up in the back, and we'll give ourselves a 1/4 inch here. We can see which way the triangle is going. The right angle is up in the top right corner. So we'll make sure that we get our right side of the foundation, our light is out, and then all of the pieces added on will be right side up. So we'll get these together. Again, I'm not going to worry about pins. I'm going to line up my fabrics technically, because we know which position they're going to go in. So get those edges nice and straight. Put our paper on to give us a 1/4 inch. And just make sure that it's going as far, just a slightly bit beyond our paper or in line with the paper, because we've cut it a little bigger than we need. Open it up and give it a press. And we'll fold the other one back, and this time we'll sew into the seam allowance. So I haven't done it on all of your pieces, foundation pieces. So you can just do whichever one you do second. Make sure you go into the seam allowance on both sides. It really doesn't matter if you do 2 or 3 first, whatever order, as long as you go into the seam allowance on the second time only. Fold, trim, and then align to sew. Again, we can see quite easily which way our triangle is going. The right angle is on the left, top left this time. So we'll take our triangle, it's a large medium, right side up, because this is the right side, together. And if anything, be sure that your triangle goes in line with the paper on this side. If you've got some freedom on this side, a bit of extra, I'd take advantage of aligning that closer to your line and giving yourself room on the triangle. And it seems like that's where I come out short sometimes. So we know for sure this is a good line. The triangles are always a little sneaky to know for sure. So let's give ourselves a bit more on that side. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's give it a press. And we'll make the other 3 in the same fashion and then give them all a final nice starch press, and then we'll trim them off. Okay, we're back and we've got all of our B units pressed well, squared up, paper removed. I have 2 of my unit A and been squared up and pressed. I'm just removing the last couple pieces of paper just to remind you that it's simplest to be done in reverse order. So I'm working backwards, and by peeling the paper, scoring it with my thumb, it removes quite easily. Had a nice little break, cup of tea, went outside with the dog. It's raining, but we needed the fresh air. It's important to take breaks regularly and keep hydrated when we're working on these things. Sometimes we can get carried away and then our body says, whoa, wait a minute. Look after me, please, and I will look after you. Okay, so our Unit A pieces are identical. We're going to sew them together so we get a pinwheel. If we do this, we are not going to get a pinwheel, although we get an interesting design. What we need to do is get our whites together, our lights, and that's going to create our pinwheel in the center. At first I wasn't really fond of this block, but once I got it together with the sample, I quite liked it. And it's really dramatic when you get lots of contrast in your dark and light. So I'll put these right sides together. And if you wish to pin, you may. I just prefer with these teeny tiny pieces to just hang on tightly and work with a 1/4 inch foot. Of course, I didn't change that out before I brought the video back on. Hang on, I gotta get mine. It's just tucked in right here. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. That will work better. I can estimate a 1/4 inch, but I don't feel confident enough to do it with an open toe foot. So, back to aligning. And we're going to do our best to kind of sew through this connection here. A little bit of paper in there. There we go. Because that's, if anything, we're going to go on the inside of this because it's going to be quite bulky and we'll need some room for all of that fabric to spread out and get that nice point in our pinwheel. Okay, let's see what we could do here. Hopefully my piece will start going safely. Let's hang on to these threads to make sure they don't pull apart. I gotta find my foot. As I'm getting closer to this dot, I'm going to just try to stay on the inside of that so that it's going to be just to the right of that intersection because of the bulk. And it's bulky, all right? It doesn't even want to go through there. Hang on. Okay. Needs a little help. There we go. I just had to lift it for one stitch and then it seemed to be on the back side, so I think we're good. Okay, let's take a look and see what we have. Pretty good. We're going to be pressing this one open, so let me give it a little finger press here and see if we can get it flat. I might have left a little bit too much space. I can go through and connect it again, but you know what? From a distance, it's going to look like a pinwheel. I think I'd rather have a bit of space between than to have chopped some off. So we'll get this one pressed and then we'll be right back. Here we are with our units 2 unit A pieces put together. Got this pressed. I'm just realizing now that if we did this in the 4 squares as I showed earlier, if each of these was a square and we sewed them as we would for a 4 patch, we would actually get the pinwheel in the center here, and that might actually flatten things a little bit more. Well, there's always several ways to get to the same place. Something to consider in another situation similar. All right, we're going to take a B and we're going to put it on opposite sides. We'll put one on each side, and then we'll press the seams toward the triangles, and then we'll do the same for the remaining 2 once those are pressed, and we'll have our block. Just a quick trick about sewing our corner triangles on. When I'm aligning this one, I'm going to make sure that the point of this square is lined up with the center seam here, and that we're going to have the same amount of dog ears on either side of our square. So let's get that positioned, and then we'll sew very carefully. And again, we'll stay just a thread or 2 inside the block, although we won't see it. Oh, we can sew it on this side. Might be the easiest to see what's happening. I don't want to stretch any of these bias lines. We didn't take the precaution of putting straight of grain on this seam, this side for the seam, but we'll sew carefully and get it in straight. That looks pretty good. I'll get the other ones on and then we'll take another look at it. Here's my messy little block 6, or Crazy Ann. I did end up a bit short on this side, but I think in squaring up as I have, I'll be able to just adjust for that when I sew it together. Here's the back, so you can see the pressing. This does eliminate a lot of bulk by pressing towards the corners, so I recommend that's done. Otherwise, it's a pretty good little sweet block of a pinwheel in a circle in a way that's twisted. I think it's a clever little block put together. Maybe you can try some in different colors, different color options, and see what you think. I hope you've had fun building this with us, and now we're halfway through our block of the month for this year. Congratulations.